I am Tim Shirley, the senior minister of the SouthShore United Church of Christ. This is a sermon for the fourth Sunday of Advent, December 20th. Magnification, introducing revolutionary Mary. Magnify, to make something appear larger than it is, especially with a lens or microscope. To extol, glorify, enhanced by the following synonyms: praise, bless, and worship. And there you have it. When Mary is purported to sing her song in perpetuity, it is all that and much more. Extolled within the incredible and fanciful creative writing capabilities of this Lucan writer or editor, we know exactly the kind of euphoria being offered to the holy. It is a beautiful text, a beautiful hymn, the epitome of hospitality that is so prevalent and prominent in Luke's gospel. The powerful are dispossessed of their privilege and prestige, sent away with empty arms, while the lowly are lifted to new and unknown, never before experienced highs and heights, filled with good things. Oh, it is a socialist dream. Dare I say that? And as long as it is exclusively reserved for worship services and heartwarming Christmas pageants, fulfilling a basic expectation as pedestrian biblical propaganda, mere Bible speak, it offers delightful imagery, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah of old. It is only when we attempt to live into the real meaning of its words, bringing Mary's song to term, shall we say, to realize its radicality in our social setting on a local and global scale, when we realize what a scandalous, subversive text it really is. When we realize that it calls us to affirmative action, that we do something, taking the kind of action required in any social justice endeavor or initiative to bring Magnificat to fruition in our world, or at least our little corner of it, that suddenly Mary's bold singing is not so very warm and fuzzy, not so appealing, but perhaps appalling to naive ears seeking to avoid or ignore any controversial word at this holy season, or otherwise. A direct accusatory threat to all of us who have plenty more than we can stand. Yes, we want everybody to have a piece of the pie, as long as we do not have to share ours in the trade-off. And herein is the dilemma of a text that on the surface seems so friendly, innocuous, but simmering underneath a raging condemnation. A prophecy reminding us of God's expectation of only our best selves. Yes, there is so much more here than meets the eye. It is already enough that we have to have our annual wrestling match with the doctrine of the virgin birth at this time of year. A challenging notion that hearkens to the misfittings of the Genesis writer who first imagined original sin, complete with the heretical idea that human sexuality is sinful, inherently evil, something to be tolerated as a procreative necessity or obligation, rather than enjoyed as one of the greatest pleasures befitting the Imago Dei, the divinely created human creature. I must acknowledge that one of the challenges for preachers who even have the slightest amount of biblical integrity, and I pray that I can be counted in that number, is that during a season in which everyone wants and expects a warm and fuzzy sermon, some fluff, these texts call for something radical, edgy and raw, yes, including the scurrilous and scandalous nature surrounding the nativity with its warmly inviting and welcoming manger. So I guess one of the points that I want to make during this sermon today is to address the question looming in Mary's musings, pretending that these were her profound words spoken once upon a time. What does it even mean to magnify God, assuming that such a far-fetched idea could ever be captured and set free in the first place? Whatever this kind of magnification is, we are sure that unpacking every verbal nuance makes for a tall, ginormous, Herculean task, seemingly far beyond the capacity of mere mortals, finite creatures such as ourselves. I cannot even begin to wrap my mind around such audacious thoughts, such outlandish ideas. And yet here we all are, gathered on the precipice of another Christmas, already waving goodbye to Advent's cold and judgmental warnings, ready to embrace the warmth of a season that is really all about new birth, in every way that metaphor is brought to life in our time and space. As is frequently the case, I think the answer lies in the unanswerable questions and not in the simplistic answers that answering would suggest and provide. But let's at least take a stab at it, shall we? After all, we are here and you expect some verbiage to accompany the silence that probably would make more sense and do a far better job. Part of the problem with our reading or singing Mary's song is that it is offered as a response in the lectionary, replacing the usual psalm that always follows the reading from the Hebrew Bible. An innocent, innocuous reading renders nothing more than a polite narrative that simply aids and abets worship. It loses its edge because in our minds it never had one. To read Mary's song with blinders is to cheapen its impact, turning it into nothing more than pablum, a Pollyanna recitation devoid of substance but full of religiously light psychobabble. So yes, today we travel a different road, to use some epiphany imagery reserved for the wise men of old. We travel home by a different route, taking the path of most resistance. The first thing I want to offer in setting the table for this text, reminding you that Luke's gospel is filled with Jesus' rubrics for the most radical table manners and etiquette. No doubt a shock to every other guest fortunate enough to be invited to share a table and dine with one who inevitably, without exception, turned from guest to host at every meal he was privy to attend, hospitality abounding. The first thing is that the Lucan writer puts words in Mary's mouth, allowing her to prophesy and tell her story. Women were not afforded voice or vote in the family system in this culture. And so immediately we know that Luke is up to something in having a woman early in his narrative declare the rightful place of all humanity. Forget about the proud and powerful. This is different. Get that other song, Gentle Mary, Meek and Mild, out of here. It has no place in this birthing event. And we're not talking the birth of the baby Jesus here. Luke is on a mission, and Mary will be the prophet. Her testimony, as did John the Baptist's, speaking truth to power, rattling the cages of oppressive authorities. Rome, are you listening? This ain't no winter wonderland. Progressive preacher Don Hutchins continues to set the table, indicating the direction that Luke the evangelist is taking his no doubt surprised, even shocked reader. Hutchins says in a sermon called, "Was Mary a Virgin or was she raped?" Can you feel it? That title alone will get your attention. She says that in order to see Jesus, we have to go beyond popular image and look to what the author of Luke actually wrote about Mary. It's in the words of the Magnificat that the author reveals the revolutionary Mary. The Magnificat is the song Mary sings when she meets Elizabeth. When read in its original Greek, it is clear that Mary bursts into song. The text of the song is a revolutionary text full of historical meaning. It would have been clear to its first century listeners. But the radical nature of this song has been lost as successive generations have set it to music and prettied it up as best they can. But in the first century, Mary was a revolutionary figure. The author of the Gospel of Luke does not intend her to be Mother Mary, meek and mild. The references with which the original audience would be familiar are to the heroines of Israel, to revolution, and to war. The Song of Mary is written in a familiar style from back in the day, following the same pattern sung by Hannah when she was made aware that she would give birth to Samuel. In the Hebrew Bible, the address, "Blessed are you among women," is a nod to Deborah in the book of Judges, as she blessed Jael, and to Judith in the Apocrypha, another heroine of Israel, each woman using her guile to kill a dreaded adversary, gaining the praise and adulation of their colleagues. What a wicked use, a violation of hospitality. Just warms your heart. Mary will destroy the proud and powerful with her words. Luke annihilating them with his pen. This is the essence of Magnificat. Yes, the Magnificat is a quintessential hospitality text, a quintessential social justice narrative, bringing them together as one. No doubt Luke's accidental or intentional methodology in creating this literary madness, calling the faithful to arms against oppression, against anything and everything that threatens to diminish humanity, disabling all systems that persecute those who live on the fringes of society, the disenfranchised and marginalized whose lives are constantly upside down in terms of having the basic bare necessities. Mary's words are calling us to action, not more words. Literalizing these magical, mythical stories of metaphorical mystery. After singing eloquently, Mary certainly does something. She goes and gives birth. She delivers. In many ways, she gave all. Her life never the same again. Mary's song, her Magnificat, is a call to us all that we are all called to social justice, the ultimate example of hospitality that can be offered by persons of faith, those of us who seek to follow Jesus as disciples of Christ. In the words of Ignacio Ellacuria, martyred in El Salvador, 1989, today in our situation, the authenticity of the people of God goes by way of poverty and justice. They are the touchstones of the truth of the faith that is professed and out of the genuineness of life as it is lived out. Poverty, which involves incarnating all our efforts and incarnating ourselves in the reality of the oppressed majorities. And that will necessarily entail a voluntary impoverishment and abnegation on the part of those who wield power. Justice, which involves giving to the people what belongs to the people. Struggling to uproot injustice, and exploitation, to establish a new earth wherein the life of the new human may be possible. Mary, she was no pushover. Yes, Mary, quite contrary. It is all there for us to see if we will only allow our vision to read between the lines of this powerfully problematic song. Magnificat, revolutionary Mary. Preach on, sister, preach on. Magnificent magnification indeed. In the name of the one who creates, redeems, and sustains, calls us to magnificently magnify the holy in every way imaginable. Amen and amen.